think that the first thing that we need to talk about is the guitar. Because I tell you why. On this podcast I had, and it's a nice sample rate, right? A lot of musicians, a lot of other entrepreneurs in the insurtech industry know how to play. So what's the story of that guitar behind you?
So the guitar was a gift actually from our Series A lead investor, Valor Equity Partners. And one, they knew that I played a little bit in a past life, and two, the partner over at Valor Equity Partners is an exceptional guitarist. So for me, it's a representation of
Nice.
those aspirations. It's a big grounding as well. Every entrepreneur needs those things to bring them back down to earth. And so I look at this and pick it up every once in a while and find peace. And I think it's something that I love. I look forward to, and once we are able to find time to picking up and finding my next pursuit in my career, which is obviously being a rock star.
Of course. Listen, that's my aspiration. My aspiration is to be a ukulele rock star because, I don't know, is it a rock star? Is it just a star? Or just use it as a background while doing stand-up? But at the end of the day,
electric guitar
lost
speaks to rock.
Scabs that I had.
Yeah, ukulele.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
Makes
interesting
sense.
niche.
It's just nice, easy to carry. And the first time that you go to Hawaii and you see people so happy and playing it, you go like, yeah, I'm going on Amazon and buying one, and it's like, I don't know, $100 or something like that, and there you have one. And it's much easier. It's only 4 strings. Yay. It's almost like playing the bass. But let's not go about what Frank Zappa said about bass players. Cool. Okay, that was great. Let's actually talk about you. So, Tanner, thank you very much for joining me today. You are here in LA, actually in Venice Beach. It's pretty cool to have someone from from so far away.
Yeah. It's rare to find folks out in LA focused on insurance. It's a novelty right now, but I think we mentioned earlier that we're trying to draw people out here, especially with the remote lifestyle. Our company's entirely remote, so it affords me the luxury of getting to choose where I live, and there's no better place than Los Angeles. I'm out here in Venice Beach.
Well, I'm sure that there are a few people in San Diego that will disagree with us, but I think that we have the better weather. And besides that, we're starting to have more and more people here in Los Angeles. And it's funny enough, it's a huge metropolitan, 12 million people, I would say. Or if we are counting the entire SoCal, we are about 20 million people. And it's amazing that slowly we have more and more insurtech presence here, from investors to startups. And the sad thing that we have only 2 big carriers and a few other regional carriers headquarters. Of course, the bigger one will be Farmers Insurance, Beck Life, I think Topa is here. And then we have, of course, super cool startups.
Yeah, soon they'll be able to mark Counterpart in that category too. It's Farmers Insurance, then Counterpart.
Hopefully one day you're going to be as big as Farmers or others. So what is Counterpart? And what is your trajectory to be, a Farmers Insurance? So what is it today? $24 billion revenue?
Yeah, so Counterpart is the management liability insurance for the 21st century business. And what I mean by that is we look at the coverages, the exposures that small businesses face today, related to directors and officers, employment practices, fiduciary, crime insurance. These are at the tip of everybody's tongue, especially here in Los Angeles. We know litigation is off the charts. We have social inflation here that's really impacting these businesses in trying ways. You just got done with COVID. You're coming out. You're dealing with inflationary pressure. You're dealing with employer relationship challenges, and we help to provide coverages, but even more importantly, to understand what the underlying exposures are. And we do this through data. My background is in being an entrepreneur. I've started several companies before, an e-commerce company, a large marketing company. And in each of these institutions, it's looking at what are the attributes of, in this case, a consumer, and trying to predict what is their probability of purchase. In insurance, you flip that on its head, and it's about what are the attributes of this business and what's the probability of a claim. So in understanding this from a first principles basis, we're able to unpack what are those coverages, what are those exposures, how are they evolving for the small business, how can we provide them with the protection that they need, but even more importantly, how can we provide them with support? And this is something as a small business. When I say small business, this is really under 250 employees that we focus on. These are companies that don't have compliance functions. You get to a medium-sized business, a large-sized business, they're thinking about this. They have, infrastructure around how, they manage employee termination. They have infrastructure around training for employees. A small business is just trying to operate. These folks have dedicated their life to this dream of theirs. And there aren't many people that are looking out for them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's getting more and more difficult to be a small business owner. And so, yeah, we've approached this industry through the lens of how can we be supporting these companies through data to provide a better coverage for them, and then also to provide additional support throughout the policy term.
Listen, I have so many questions to follow up on this, because from data, what type of data? You talked about AI, and I'm sure that you know what's the AI and what goes behind it beside the buzzword, because from where you're coming from, and of course your thesis about how you can improve and actually provide value, because I've seen so many startups that talk about, oh, we are going to improve XYZ by providing better claims or better that. But the first thing before we dive into that, and by the way, what I really liked is the support. So let's talk about them in a second, but if you don't mind, give us a little bit more background about yourself. You talked about that you're an entrepreneur, started in e-commerce. What have you done so far, and why insurance? Because listen, I've been in the insurance space in the past 7, almost 8 years, so end of 14. And that was by accident, right? I was in Vegas. I met the previous chief digital officer of Farmers Insurance. He told me, hey, you should join. I'm doing this revolution. I said, okay. Now, so that was my debut. What made you join insurance?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. It seems like everybody in insurance has some roundabout way of actually entering the space. It's not something you dream of as a kid. I want to be in insurance, but it has become quickly an obsession of mine. And my journey started with a previous company that I built called Button, and this was the marketing company. And we did a lot of great things.
What?
Yeah, Button. It's in New York. It was a mobile marketing company, and we did have an office in San Francisco as well. And one of the things we did really well, and I think is a large part of our success, was we really invested in our people, in the infrastructure around how we hire, the infrastructure around how we train, how we communicate, how we collaborate, and this led to great outcomes with being able to bring on exceptional talent, being able to retain this talent, people working really thoughtfully and mindfully at our company. And as I transitioned from New York back to LA, I had some family stuff come up that actually brought me back to LA. I was thinking about how I can apply similar infrastructure, similar systems, and how I can weave these together into a platform that is more democratized for every small business. We're an insuretech. we were in the tech space, and pretty forward thinking in terms of our people operations. So, but there's a lot of
Hmm.
research coming out about how people operations was driving better results, not just in terms of the employees, but also the company financially. So this was an opportunity for me to to take what we had uh, built at Button and see how I could package this for small businesses. Again, these are the folks that don't have this infrastructure, that need better systems and processes, but it's not at the top of their mind. So this was 2000, the end of 2018, early 2019, and I went to my entrepreneur friends with this platform. Yeah, I called it the culture stack, and I was pitching this idea to them, and they couldn't wrap their heads around it. They couldn't get excited about it because it required a meaningful investment. Anytime you talk about culture, time you're talking about people operations, people get a bit skittish because
Hmm.
one, it's uncomfortable when they realize, ooh, I might not have things as buttoned up as I otherwise thought I did. Or two, they realize that it's a huge investment of their time because that's shifting the organizational momentum in a different direction, and it requires buy-in, constant communication. So, so with this idea, it kind of fell on its face, to be quite honest. I think it was great in principle, but it just wasn't the right time. Um, and as I had these conversations, I started to learn about when you don't do these things, there were plenty of examples popping up in 2018, 2019, when companies didn't have proper culture, compliance, governance. And it led to lawsuits. It led to harassment claims. It led to wrongful termination events. And these were very significant lawsuits that impaired businesses. That were a challenge for a big distraction for the organization, just in terms of financially, but also in terms of time. And it's a black eye on the company. And so as I started to investigate this further, go ahead.
I'm going to derail us a little bit. What do you mean by a culture compliance? I understand it's an HR tech, and we'll do a shout out to Jay Weintraub and Samara later. And of course, actually, with that, what we've seen, what we see today with the Elon Musk. But what do you mean by culture compliance?
Um, so culture, I think, even this word is difficult to describe. Culture is simply a representation of values in a company, which there's lots of
Mhm.
discussions about good culture and bad culture. I would argue that um, you know, Elon Musk isn't necessarily creating a bad culture. The problem is there's dissonance between the existing culture and his culture. So that's bad when you have dissonance between the two. But when you have a clear set of values and principles that you are constantly communicating about, that's great culture so long as your employees share that same view. So it's really important. It's having a appreciation for what your culture is at the business and espousing those to your team constantly, and then making sure you're hiring people that share that similar perspective. In terms of compliance and governance, I mean, this is everything from the regulatory agencies to your partnerships. Each one of these have certain stipulations around the guidelines that how you operate, and if you trip those up, the infractions can be quite substantial. Whether this means losing a partnership, whether this means litigation from the government, and yeah, we've seen. I mean, some of these rifts that are taking place, people aren't alerting the government of the. I think it depends on the state, but there's a certain number of employees where if you're terminating them in a layoff, you have to notify the government that you're doing
Hmm.
so. I mean, this is stuff that, and if you're terminating, you need to go through a process of documentation. These are things that a small business owner, a larger company would know, should understand. Sometimes they still get it wrong, but a small company, they're not going through this incredibly complex municipal, state, federal guidelines to figure out what's the OSHA mandate for my employees in California versus what are those in Massachusetts, or the Family Medical Leave Act. How does this apply during COVID and in the office versus remote work? I mean, you could just think about the permutations of complexity that's being pushed down on these small businesses when they just want to sell their product.
Hmm. So basically, that complexity in HR and already knowing regulation, that was a very easy shift to insurance for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a small business owner myself, so I appreciated the frustration. I also live in Southern California now and have many friends that are small business owners. And the legislation in California is uh, is very asymmetric with a lot of other states. They make it very hard to do business here. Put it that way. They make it very, very hard to do business
Yeah,
here. And
yeah.
there aren't many people looking out for them. There's a lot of
Every
words
time it's
said.
the ABC.
Yeah, exactly. People say things, but when you get down to it and you really dig into what it takes to run a small business, I mean, the margins are razor thin. So anything that comes up these days, and you can count it on your hand in the last 6 months, what's been going on in these small businesses, any one of them could take them down. And yeah, we thought there was a big opportunity here to support them in particular, with being their partner, and doing it from the lens of insurance.
So let's talk more about insurance. So you've been in the insurance space how long?
3 years. Yeah. Well,
Three
yeah,
years.
about three years. It was, I first got introduced to this about 3 years ago.
And how was the shift from pure technology, HR, which is actually very close to what you're doing today, especially within the regulation, and then using that background? Well, let's start with from e-commerce to HR and now insurance. How was that transition for you?
Humbly, um, insurance is a an institution that has been around for a very long time, um, and it's been successful. It contributes a ton of value to the policyholders in many different ways. And I have a lot of respect for what it unlocks. It allows people to take risk. Essentially, you're transferring risk. And I think, fundamentally, this is important for us as an economy, as a country. Um, and I think it does a lot of good. But I think also we need to take a look in the mirror and see that things could be done better. And I don't like the term disruptor. Like, I think that's silly. I don't think it makes sense in an industry that has been this successful for this long. Like, they're doing most things right. What I see is an opportunity to create transparency around uh, some of those areas that data can be applied to, technology can be applied to, where you can just shift your mindset around, how the value chain operates, and how you create more value for the end consumer. And yeah, this is the industry has been so successful that it hasn't necessarily had to think about this. And I think we're seeing a lot of venture capital money, a lot of smart entrepreneurs come into the space, and partner with those forward-thinking carriers, and bring these ideas to the forefront with the backing of both private equity, venture capital, and the balance sheets of carriers. So yeah, I'm excited for the change that is happening. This shift, this excitement around insuretechs. It certainly isn't going to be easy to take
Hmm.
a institution with this much momentum, But I am very galvanized by the conversations we've had and the impact that we've had in a short amount of time with the backing of folks like Markel and Aspen, who've been great partners to Counterpart since the beginning.
Are you an MGA, MGU?
We're an MGU, yeah. So the difference for those of you who are not familiar is MGAs are really just about distribution, so managing general agent. We are more focused on our platform and helping to underwrite more thoughtfully. So it's a little more value to our carrier partners and broker partners.
So basically, Markel, Aspen, they're providing you with the front. Are they? Sorry, I'm jumping to conclusions here. Are they providing? They are just a fronting company. They are providing the paper because you have a binding authority, I assume.
Yeah, correct. So yeah, we are a technology platform that we work with both Markel and Aspen. We're only writing on the surplus lines now on a quota share basis for some products. In other cases, using their paper to write 100%. It really depends on the program. We can be pretty flexible about what and how we underwrite. It just depends on the appetite of the carrier and what they want on their balance sheet. And yes, we provide the underwriting tools, technology, the data infrastructure, as I mentioned, the risk management services, and also claims management is something that we've seen a lot of opportunity in.
Wait. You're doing your own claims management or not outsourcing that to a TPA?
Yeah, so claims is something that we currently managed by Aspen and Markel, but we've created a lot of data infrastructure to actually make us smarter about how we get to resolutions quicker for the benefit of all stakeholders. And yeah, we see a lot of opportunity in claims to improve loss ratios, and yeah, make sure that defendant who's out there with a litigation on their hands, that we close that and they can move on with their lives as quickly as possible.
Let's talk about data and underwriting, because at the end of the day, when we are looking at insurance, it's all about the risk that you bring in and the risk that goes out and how much money you make while investing it or dealing with the reserves, right? So you mentioned earlier about AI and data, and that's basically the secret sauce. What is the special data that you're using, and what is the machine learning that uses that? What's the output?
Yeah, so the output, I think it's important to start there and then work backwards to what goes into it. The output is what we call our digital risk profile. And this is the ability, it's essentially a third rail for our underwriters to understand what's the public, or I should say the internet perspective of this small business. Because when you get an application, I don't know the last time you saw a management liability application, there's somewhere between 20 to 50 questions on this application. And they're asking everything from where you're located, how many employees you have, what your revenues are, prior litigation. It's important stuff, and this has been validated time and time again by insurance companies and their actuaries. And so we find this valuable. But when you're thinking about these actuarial models, you're measuring claims, the probability of a claim. And I think it's safe to say that in today's environment, what comes in a PDF is just a sliver of the information that actually is useful about this company. Every company, every human has a digital profile. Me, you, the internet, the cookies that are tracking us, the e-commerce company that knows our purchasing behavior from the past. They know where we're entering from. They know the time of day that we're most likely to purchase based on similar cohorts. This is all information that's useful to them, and helping to drive their outcomes of increasing the basket, the purchases that the consumer makes. And so, yeah, in our case, it's taking these attributes of a company, again, our digital risk profile, and being able to predict the probability of a claim. And we create tiers for the probability of a claim, from very low risk to very high risk, with a confidence score and the data we collected. So is this statistically significant? How much can our models rely on this, or does it need further review? And so the philosophy around our digital risk profile, which I think is pretty novel to this industry, is that we don't see this as the end all. This isn't a black box AI model. And I'm sure you've talked to lots of different tech entrepreneurs that say, AI is the future. It's going to be, in principle, how things are done. I actually disagree. I think that, especially in management liability, these are complex risks. There's very broad exposures and very broad coverage. It actually requires not just a better understanding of the company, but also it requires expertise about underwriting itself. And so we pair this data with our underwriting team. We call them risk engineers, to evaluate the exposures that we're getting both from the app and from the third-party data, to say, is this a company we want to write? And then if it is something we want to write, how does this digital risk profile change our evaluation, the coverage, and the pricing for the company? So, what goes into that? I think it relates back to our original conversation around, what are the exposures that these small businesses face, and it's culture of the company. And culture of the company can be measured in so many different ways, but largely about what are employees saying about this company? What is the prior litigation around this company, as well as it relates to compliance and governance. We talked about how that compliance and governance could take the form of improperly managing terminations or layoffs, and then ultimately business operations, because we see that with management liability, there's a much higher probability of a claim if the company is challenged financially. If the company's having a difficult time actually surviving, they're going to be making more rash decisions, and ultimately going to be cutting corners, and that's when it can lead to pretty severe litigation for the business. So I can't go into specifics about what that data is. That's kind of the Coke formula for the business.
Of course.
But I think you can get a sense of it from the buckets that I'm talking about.
And I love AI companies, right? You look at my portfolio and companies that I support. I see AI as a tremendous tool to take you to the next level and process things with the probability. It's all about probability in a scale that is human, that what we do, the decision making. And there is always a certain probability. It can be 100% correct, but then of course it can be 54. And then, when I see companies that talk about, oh, we are doing AI and machine learning, it's like, okay, and I really try to understand, what is the data sets that they feed into the machine learning? And do they do something which is more than linear regression? Because there is so much there, and sometimes they are just throwing buzzwords at you. But that's enough. If you don't mind, can you give us a little bit of, let's call it, insurance one-on-one?
I think that's a really important point. And I think that buzzwords are a massive problem across any technology company. I see this a lot in insurance, and there's so many buzzwords that are thrown around: APIs, AI, machine learning, seem to be the most common. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what these actually mean. And I think, you know, aside from using these fancy acronyms, it's about the applications of the data. And so if you think about like really the complexity that goes into a system, it starts with understanding what data is actually relevant. Once you understand what data is relevant, now you got to figure out how you get this data. Then you got to figure out how you structure the data once you get it. And then you got to figure out the applications of the data once it's structured in such a way that it's actually useful. AI, machine learning, is just that last piece. The other parts are data engineering, which don't get me wrong, like AI is incredibly valuable and important, but the data engineering piece is what so many companies get wrong. They can't figure out how to even get the data. If you talk about AI with a traditional insurance company, they're using data from 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What relevance does it have in a post-COVID world? Like, we've completely changed the business operations. So I think that the ability to ingest information and structure it is equally as not, if more important than the AI. Now, the AI piece is, to your point, like a lot of companies do linear regressions and they call this AI. It is. This is the special sauce to our company. We've invested in data infrastructure with everybody from, let's see, we have 3 actuaries that have the toolkit of data scientists. The earliest person to work on this with me is somebody with a PhD in machine learning. We are constantly back testing our assumptions based on, does this make sense? And I think that's like, this is the fallacy that a lot of insurance companies get into. It is they forget explainability, and they forget the importance of being able to take an algorithm and look at the broader context of why the results are what they are. Why this information is useful, and to start to unpack how they get more information around that's tangential to this, and build a depth of resources, because small businesses, this information is very challenging to get. Like, you talk about the breadth of data, or the depth of data. A small business, a restaurant here in California, has a pretty small footprint. If it's just a few employees, or you think of a contractor or a consultant, they maybe have a website and a few other pages about the company. So you have to be this data spelunker, as one of our data scientists likes to call it, to constantly be back testing your models to ensure that you're not seeing asymmetry in one factor that's skewing this algorithm around, and things aren't too weighted to one data source, where if you don't get that data source, then everything falls apart. So I appreciate your reticence around data. I think this is something that has been fundamental in every company that I've built, and in insurance in particular. It is not well understood, and it is not well practiced. And I think there's a lot of learnings that we hope to share with our partners. This is the reason that we partner with large insurance companies while they're excited to work with us, is that we give them a lens into the future, what can occur. And we work in management liability, but the same philosophy can be generalized across many different product lines. It's just, this is where we placed our bet, because this is where we found a certain amount of arbitrage and also interest in helping small businesses.
So as our time starting to reach its end, and sadly we can continue to talk about data, I just want to have 2 more questions about the business itself. So you're working with Aspen and Markel. Why did you take the direction of a surplus product? Well, the answer is in the question.
Yeah, for any insuretech small business, speed really matters. Um, Getting back to the conversation around data, the more data we have, the smarter we become. I think this is, again, a tried and true principle. Reps lead to learning, leads to statistical significance. And launching an admitted product obviously involves lots of regulatory filings. It can take anywhere from 6 to 12, even 18 months to go through that process. And so, yeah, we wanted to bring something to the market quicker with partners that understood management liability. So, they've had a lot of success in these products in particular. So, is this very complementary relationship between Markel and Aspen, where they understood the product, they knew what the exposures was, they quickly got up to speed on what we're doing, the novelty of what we're doing, and they had the paper to support a surplus lines product. And while they have some admitted filings, it's something we would probably want to work on for an extended time period to make sure that it is truly marketable. And yeah, even getting form filing changes can take many months depending on the state. So yeah, speed was of importance here. And we also launched during
Of the
COVID,
essence.
and this was a time when the market there
Yep.
was a lot of variables that were not accounted for in admitted filings that I think people are still trying to wrap their heads around.
Are the plans for the future? What's next?
Yeah. I can't get into specifics about our program, but we've sold thousands and thousands of policies. We are, and this is small business. This is premiums in thousands of dollars. So you can imagine what load we see with our submissions, and this goal of Counterpart is to continue to double down on this. I think we've seen a lot of success in a very early stage. We're seeing attractive loss ratios that validated our philosophy around using data. We are exploring deeper partnerships with our carriers to expand our appetite, and also potentially expand to new products that are tangential to what we already have live, again, being directors and officers, employment practices, fiduciary, and crime. And then, yeah, I think as we spoke about, claims is a really interesting part of the equation that we see an opportunity to apply that similar data infrastructure to result in better outcomes for our policyholders. So a lot on the horizon, and I think I'm kind of pinching myself that after these 3 years to be where we are with the team that we have, which is a combination of insurance experts with data and entrepreneurial experts. We've captured lightning in a bottle, and there's still so much to do, but we've come a long ways in a very short period of time.
Daniel, sadly, we are reaching the end of our time today. I wish that we had more. So I need to ask you the last question that I'm asking everyone. Can you give us a tip, some sort of a recommendation? It can be a book, where to go for, for a vacation or an amazing restaurant here in Southern California.
Yeah, this is actually a great question. We spoke about the guitar and this being kind of meditative for me. I actually, on occasion, will actually go to a monastery, and I have a fledgling practice in meditation that I find really helpful. And there's this great monastery called Deer Park in I think it's Carlsbad. I was just there this weekend, and it's a Buddhist monastery. It's very forward-thinking monastery, though. You can go there for a day on Sunday, or you can go for a weekend or a week or longer. Very welcoming community. Just ground you to help you find your breath and help you have a little more gratitude in life because it's pretty good out there.
Is that the one that Leonard Cohen joined back in the day?
I don't know specifically. Um, it was started by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a revered Buddhist monk. He actually sadly passed away earlier this year. He has monasteries across the country, actually. I've been to one in New York. I've been to one in France. There's a big one in Thailand. Obviously, one down near San Diego. It's kind of between Orange County and San Diego. And yeah, it's an incredible community. And you just after a day out there, everything looks a little more vivid. Everything looks a little brighter, especially with just the headlines. It's if you were to look at the news for too long, you'd think the world is ending, and it helps bring some perspective about life.
Tanner, thank you very, very much for your time today. It was a pleasure meeting you online, and hopefully in the next InsurTech LA event, we're going to bring you and a couple of other folks from the industry who are based here in Southern California.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me.